Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Midweek Motivation. This is Brina, and thank you so much for tuning in to today's word. I pray you're having a great week so far, and that your middle of the week is going well also as we look forward to the end of the work week. So today's word comes from Psalm 16, verse 11. And I encourage you to not only read that verse, but also to read the entire psalm. It's only 11 verses, so it shouldn't take you that long. But I encourage you to read the entire thing. But the key passage is Psalm 16:11, and from the New American Standard Version, it says, "You will make known to me the way of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. In your right hand, there are pleasures forevermore." So the word for today is the presence of God. That is the word for today. And again, be sure to read the entire psalm. I'll pull some things out of it as we talk about the presence of God, but I encourage you to read the entire thing. So what does this presence of God look like? And as I began to just reflect this week on the last few years of my life, God reminded me that He was with me. His presence was with me in the good, in the not so good. I have experienced the presence of God. So what does that look like? In verse 1, the psalmist talks about the fact that we have refuge in God. He says, "Keep me safe, O God, for in you I take refuge." And so we have that. In the presence of God, we have refuge. If you think about being in a storm, if you've ever experienced a hurricane or a tornado, you know that you want to take refuge so that you can be safe. And you try to be in a safe place while the storm is passing over. And so with God and in God's presence, we have refuge. The second thing I want to highlight is that there are good things that come as a result of being in God's presence. And we see that in verse 2. It says, "I say to the Lord, you are my God. Apart from you, I have no good thing." Now, in the epistle of James, James talks about, and he says that every good and perfect gift comes from above. It comes from God. So in God's presence, we have good things. Next, in his presence, we have counsel. And look at verse 7. It says, "I will praise the Lord who counsels me." So in God's presence, we have access to God's counsel so that we can get wisdom. We know the book of Proverbs talks about getting wisdom and all thy getting to get understanding. And that wisdom is not the wisdom of the world, but it's the wisdom of God. And so in God's presence, we have access to his counsel. And then the last thing that we see in verses 8 and 9 is that in God's presence, we have security. And in verse 9 in particular, it says, "My heart is glad and my tongue rejoices. My body also rests secure." So we have this assurance, we have this confidence that in the presence of God, we are secure, we're safe, that all is well, that God keeps us and takes care of us no matter what is happening. So there is just so much in the presence of God. And so I encourage you today to seek out the presence of God. He is waiting to have a relationship with us. He's waiting for us to spend time with him. And as it says in this last verse, in verse 16, that in his presence, we have fullness of joy. We have everything that we need in the presence of God. And that fullness of God is a fullness of joy is just so rich. Not only do we have joy, which transcends all, a joy is just a confidence, a peace, that all is well, despite what's going on, I can still have joy. But not only do I have joy, I have fullness of joy. So it's more than just joy. It's the fullest joy that we can experience. And we can experience that only through the presence of God. So that's the word for today, the presence of God. I hope that blesses you. Be sure to like and share this video. I would love to hear your comments, what your thoughts are on the word for today, and we will see you next week. Take care. Be blessed.